Hey everyone, Zirin again on Wednesday, so you know what that means. Let's talk about light novels. Today we have one I've been reading recently called The Sorcerer King of Destruction and the Golem of the Barbarian Queen, or in Japanese, Hametsu no Mado o to Goromu no Banhi. Feel free to make fun of my pronunciation, I'm not that proud of it. Obviously that wouldn't fit in the title, so I did shorten it as much as I could. This one shocked me in how much I enjoyed it, even though I had absolutely no expectations walking into the story. The premise is nothing too special. The main character gets summoned into another world as the Sorcerer King of Destruction, fated to destroy the world. However, a chance accident leads him into messing up the ritual. With an incredibly selective memory loss and little hope of survival, his only chance of getting out comes in the form of a beautiful elven golem that he creates. Everyone here should already know how I feel about the amnesiac protagonist, in the sense that I think it's a fairly overdone story device. It's good with the right conditions, but we've seen it enough that you have to do something special with it for it to feel good for the reader. Isekais are isekais, otherwise known as otherworld reincarnations for the very few of you who have not heard of them before. Even though they have completely saturated the light novel market, I actually don't dislike them, although I will say I don't tend to view that setting as a positive either. So far the premise sounds kinda ho-hum, right? However, what makes Sorcerer King of Destruction stand out is that I think it is a novel that actually utilizes the fact that this kind of story is told from the main character's perspective. What do I mean by that? I've said this before in my light novel introduction video, that one of the things I really love about them was how many of them introduce other character perspectives, which isn't something we usually see in anime or manga adaptations. It's nice to take a step back and briefly see how other characters view our main character and events that happen from their perspective. Sorcerer King of Destruction takes that concept in the complete opposite direction, where the reason why the story is interesting and funny to read is that we only see the main character's perspective. The story plays with the idea of having an unreliable narrator, essentially the concept that the person of whom we are viewing the lens of the story isn't particularly seeing everything as we normally would. Plenty of visual novels and other stories have taken this concept into very dark directions. In fact, there's another light novel I plan on talking about in the future that does this really well. On the other hand, Sorcerer King of Destruction pretty much uses it for comedic purposes. It works in this regard because even though the main character tries to act like an incredibly rational young adult, the way he views every situation and what happens is off enough that even us as the readers can tell that he's clearly missing things. He seems to focus on just the weirdest aspects and has an incredibly scatterbrained mentality. So the fun part of the reading experience is just trying to figure out what exactly he's not seeing. When the protagonist first creates a titular golem Gotaro, he asks for a partner in life with a fixation on a dumb dog he used to own, so that even when a golem is growing increasingly attached to him, he somehow still treats it like an overly attached pet. Even after she becomes an amazingly beautiful elf golem, his viewpoint never really changes. When she ends up committing complete atrocities, he goes like, "Oh, bad Gotaro, I should have taught her better." It's especially obvious when the author writes a scene of the main character observing her actions in one fashion, like, "Aw, she must be lonely, I should hold Gotaro's hand." And then we see an illustration of that scene showing Gotaro to be completely ecstatic. In a different story, that might be chalked up as the author being lazy in describing the scene, but because we are following a main character who views things in such a particular way, we know it isn't described because he just doesn't notice these things at all. The Sorcerer King of Destruction also manages to sidestep the problem of the main character being godlike and omniscient by having the love interest or golem be the completely overpowered broken one. Gotaro is the one running around and absolutely eviscerating most of the foes, with the MC playing basically commentary. Is the MC weak? No, he probably is really strong as well, it's just that he himself doesn't really know or acknowledge it, so his reactions to situations don't really take that into account. It kinda sidesteps the problem of why doesn't the main character just sweep everything with his brokenness, because he himself doesn't think he's that strong thanks to Gotaro doing all the heavy lifting. It might sound like I've been super nice to the Sorcerer King of Destruction, that's because I always like to talk about reasons to enjoy a story before I start to round out that opinion with aspects I don't like as much, or just things to watch out for in general. To start with, I think for some people, they might not actually enjoy the main character's perspective being so dense, for a lack of a better word. While I think it ultimately ended up pretty funny to me, it might come across as entirely aggravating to others that the main character sees a bunch of Fist of the North Star bandits beating up a man and is worried about the hospital bills he will have to pay them if Gotaro stops them. Or how absolutely everything Gotaro is feeling completely flies over the main character's head. Imagine if you were viewing the lens of the story through the protagonist of a really bad harem anime. Then imagine you heard his inner thoughts. That's what Sorcerer King of Destruction is, kind of, in a sense. While the story sidesteps the question of why doesn't the main character do whatever he wants, you know, because of how he views the world and how Gotaro is the one doing most of the heavy lifting, that doesn't change the fact that, yeah, Gotaro is kinda broken. Most of the fights, Gotaro is completely overwhelmingly stronger than an opponent, with the only exception being other ridiculously strong opponents in the world. It kinda makes it so that many of the confrontations don't really have much of a sense of tension, as we already know Gotaro is probably gonna clean everything up. Probably the most striking problem to me anyways, is how the story doesn't really seem to have an overarching direction of where it wants to go. Usually when you have an amnesiac as the main character, the initial goal is generally trying to get his memory back, with the past identity being a crucial plot point to the main conflict in some sort of way. In the Sorcerer King of Destruction's case, it feels like the MC himself doesn't really care about that. It also isn't really important to the plot since the memory he lost was purely about the people closest to him back on Earth, and there isn't really a reason why that would be important. The only real direction the story has is the main character is meant to be the Sorcerer King of Destruction but managed to avert the ritual, so I guess he wants to find out more about that? It just kind of leads the main character to aimlessly wander throughout the world in search of more information. The only real priority he seems to have is to live, and sure, while that is a motivation, it's not really a compelling one. While watching the main character and Gotaro get through each situation is fun in of itself, having some sort of overarching conflict would help give the story some direction, and ultimately get the reader excited about checking out the next volume to see if he makes any progress on this quest of his. Maybe it will develop into some sort of exciting plot in the future, but so far, 2 volumes are out in English and still no sign of it yet. The Sorcerer King of Destruction and the Golem of the Barbarian Queen is a type of story where I think it probably wouldn't work nearly as well in most other mediums. Nearly all of its appeal, to me at least, is based on how unreliable of a narrator the main character is, and trying to see everything that he isn't seeing. I feel like if it was adapted to, say, either an anime or a manga, it would completely lose that appeal, because then all the scenes would be showing everything, so there'd be no interpretation or trying to figure things out. All of his inner monologues wondering why Gotaro is shaking would be entirely redundant if we can clearly see Gotaro's expression and reactions of everyone else nearby. While yes, I did show an example of an illustration revealing this discrepancy, every volume only has like 3 or 4 throughout the story, so they only serve to give brief glimpses of what we should actually be seeing, if we weren't following the main character. Also, if you are wondering why I've been calling the main character, that's because he has amnesia and never actually remembers what his name is supposed to be, which is, you know, at least a funny point later. Sorcerer King of Destruction and the Golem of the Barbarian Queen, I can't say it was my favorite light novel or anything. There are others I definitely enjoyed more so, however, it did make me laugh, and there was enough special about it that I felt like talking about it right now. Also because I just read it. Anyways, that's it for me. If you have any ideas on maybe what I should put in the background of these light novel videos, feel free to give any suggestions in the comment section below. For now, I'll still stick with just putting random game footage in the background, maybe some teasers as to things you might see in the future perhaps. If you enjoyed what you saw, the like button is down there as always, subscribe if you want to support the channel, notification, yada yada yada, I think you know what I'm gonna say. I'll be seeing you later, till next time.